Resuming debate, the honourable member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure and an honour to rise in this place, even when it is time to speak, and yet another poorly prepared Liberal budget as I am here tonight. You know, Budget Day used to be the most exciting day of the year in the House of Commons, and it fell flat. It was ridiculous. You know, the finance minister stood up, green dress, everything's fine in Canada. Well, this just in. It is not fine in Canada. Madam Speaker, to the contrary, this country is in massive trouble, difficult economic position. Canadian families are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. Businesses are struggling every day just to keep their doors open because of the carbon tax is one of the reasons I'm hearing in my province of Saskatchewan. Yeah, I will agree. 2022 was a year of high inflation and massive deficits, rising cost of living, tax hikes. And 2023 looks like it'll be much of the same. I remember not a long time ago, the finance minister said we would have deficit inflation. The member from Carleton in this House for over 2 years signaled that there was going to be massive inflation. The member from Carleton was right. When you continue to spend and spend and spend, as this government has done, you are going to get inflation trouble, and that's what happened in 2022. We are in an economic crisis that has impacted Canadians across the regions and all age groups. And we've mentioned in this House a lot, 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals. The average rent in this country has nearly doubled in the last 8 years. The down payment now needed to buy a house has also doubled, and inflation continues to drive grocery prices higher and higher. For young Canadians, the dream of starting a family and even owning their own house is getting further and further out of reach. And for many families, there is a growing reliance on food banks, and I see it in my city of Saskatoon. More and more families each month, unfortunately, arrive at the food bank looking for food to tide them over for a paycheck or at the end of the month. We've never seen the numbers so high in my city. And Saskatchewan is the economic engine right now of this country. Yet we have so many families visiting the food bank in my city. You know, it's really tough right now putting gas in any vehicles or even signing up your kids for sports. Many seniors living on fixed incomes are having to choose between filling the fridge and paying the rent. And finally, you know, Madam Speaker, I had constituency week 2 weeks ago. I have the largest number of senior facilities in Saskatchewan. That's right, Saskatoon-Grasswood is #1 in Saskatchewan for senior facilities. And I spent a lot of time visiting them over the 2-week period, and everything is going up. Food, rent, heat. In fact, at one facility, and I'm not going to mention that facility, during the round table, the seniors said to me, rent is going up $15 a month. 1-5, $15 a month. That facility last year did not raise the price of rent, but they had to raise it this year, in 2023, by $15. For many, that's a drive-through at Tim Hortons, $15. These seniors were stressed out over the $15 that they're going to be paying next month on their rent. That speaks volumes of what has happened in this country. You know, we emerged from a financial crisis, I remember in 2008, the stronger economy than any other country in the G7 when that came out in 2007 and 8. Our economy was growing steadily because it was competitive. We were aggressively exploring international trade. We had a government focused on fiscal restraint. But we've lost that. We've lost our competitiveness. Just today, a story in the newspaper in Saskatchewan, Vital Minerals have halted construction of rare earths at the University of Saskatchewan. That is the same facility. About 6 weeks ago, the Prime Minister was gladly sharing photos. He was there at Vital Minerals, Well, now it's shut down.
Shameful.
This is the sort of economy that we're losing, not only in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, but certainly the country. So what has happened? What has changed between 2015 and now that has led to the massive economic problems we see? Well, I think we can all point to 2015 when the Liberals came to power in October. Yeah. Early promises, remember that, we'll just have small deficits and they'll be gone within 3 years. Wow, what's turned out? Massive deficits, blown right out of the water. Now, 8 years into this Liberal government's reign, they have added more debt to the books than any other prime minister in the history of this country, over 150 plus years. They've blown that out in 8 short years. Fiscal restraint, Madam Speaker, as you know, has been thrown right out the window. It's led to record levels of inflation and certainly driven up the interest rates. It was interesting listening to the finance minister as she was preparing for the budget, because a month before she made the announcement, everything's going to be fine. We're going to haul in our spending. We're going to control it. She was talking to the banks in the country. They all said you need to reel in the spending. So we were prepared for that. Wow, did Canadians get a surprise when she announced the budget that day in this House. So what does the finance minister now propose to fix the problems that her government has created? Well, more of the same, unfortunately. We found out that day when the budget came down. This year, the minister proposes to tack on another $43 billion into the debt with no path at all to balance the budget, something that they said when they came to Parliament as government in 2015. After 3 years, we'll balance everything. 8 years in, they haven't even come close to balancing the budget.
Shameful.
The finance minister also proposed to continue to raise taxes, including the carbon tax. And by 2030, that's 7 years away, the government's 2 carbon taxes could add 50 cents per litre to the price of gas. 50 cents. So now diesel in this country is roughly about $1.80. It's going to be over $2 again this summer. And then we're going to all sit here and bark. How come food prices have gone up? Well, it's because of the transportation costs that this government is imposing with their carbon tax. We've seen it coast to coast, Madam Speaker, that the carbon tax is adding to everyday expenses. So what should we do? Well, any plan should focus on 3 pillars. We've talked on this side of the House for the last 8 years about lowering taxes, tackling the high inflation, and removing the government gatekeepers to make it more difficult to get businesses done here in Canada. We've seen that. I've just mentioned Vital Minerals closing today in Saskatoon. We need to lower taxes at a time when so many Canadians are already struggling to make ends meet. The obvious first step is to make sure they have more money in their pockets, because then they can pay down their debt and actually maybe enjoy a vacation, something the Prime Minister casually goes on every 2 or 3 months. Normal Canadians are cutting back on vacations. The recent survey we've heard, 6 in 10 will not be taking a vacation this summer. It's simply too expensive. This year, a family of 4 is going to spend over $1,000 more on food. Family will also pay between $402 and $847 because of the carbon tax, even after the rebate. And yes, the parliamentary budget officer says, in fact, the government says it will all be revenue neutral. The budget officer knows too well. In my province of Saskatchewan, it is not revenue neutral. So we're concerned in this country, Madam Speaker. We're concerned because out of control spending, the growing deficit that we were seeing in this country of $1.22 trillion. I can't add that up fast enough for every household in this country. The average Canadian household share now is $81,000. How are we going to get this down? That will be the biggest, I think, the biggest area of concern for the next Conservative government, because Canadians want to get the debt down and they're looking forward to a new Conservative government to show them the way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well said.